I feel like something this good shouldn't be this easy. I mean, who's even buying canned biscuits anymore? Somebody needs to tell them how easy it is to make really good biscuits at home. Like, you don't need anything fancy. It takes 5 minutes to mix together. Let me show you how. First, get your oven preheating nice and hot. You want it at 425 degrees Fahrenheit. That high heat is going to help your biscuits rise in those nice, tall, buttery, flaky layers. Now, quick tip before we begin, you want nice cold buttermilk, but grab your butter and go ahead and toss this in your freezer. In fact, I like to let mine sit in the freezer for 10 to 15 minutes before I actually begin baking. Not mandatory, but the colder your butter and your buttermilk are, the lighter and flakier and just better your biscuits are going to be. While your butter is getting cold, grab 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Just put this in a medium-sized mixing bowl. Add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. We're also going to add 2 teaspoons of granulated sugar. It's just a little bit of sugar. I'm gonna guess the store-bought biscuits probably use more, but I can't say for sure. But that little bit of sugar is going to add a lot of depth of flavor without making the biscuits sweet. I wouldn't call these sweet biscuits. Would you call these sweet biscuits? No, nobody's gonna call them sweet biscuits. Next, baking soda. This is just 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Now, I have another biscuit recipe on my website. It's amazing. It doesn't use buttermilk though. So once we rope in buttermilk, I like to also, for this particular recipe, use a little bit of baking soda because they play nicely together. And again, it's going to give you that really nice texture. Next, almost forgot my salt. You will need 1 teaspoon of table salt. A really fine sea salt would also be fine, but I just use table salt. All right, let's just stir everything together really quickly. Get all of those ingredients nicely combined. And let's grab our butter. All right, nice cold butter. The colder, the better. I shouldn't say that. You freeze it too long, it just becomes impossible to work with. My favorite key to making really good biscuits is to cut this butter using a box grater. Really quickly, if you don't have a box grater, you'll just cut this butter into tablespoon-sized pieces and use a pastry cutter or even like a pair of knives to cut the butter into your flour. But most people have a box grater on hand, and this is going to make really easy work of things. So here's what you're going to do. Just take your butter. We are going to be using all 8 tablespoons of this unsalted butter today. And I'm just going to hold on to the end using the butter wrapper, and I'm just going to shred it like it's cheese. You do want to grate all of that butter, but I try to get as low as I can, grating my fingers. And then usually I'll have like a larger piece left behind. I'll just quickly chop that up a little bit. Let's free our butter. And this is just going to go right in our bowl with our dry ingredients. We want all of this butter in here, and we also don't want to handle it too much with our hands. You're going to have to touch it some. But the more your hands touch the butter, the faster it's going to melt. And we don't want that because, again, cold butter is key. And then your grater probably still has some butter left on it. You know we do not waste butter around here. I'm just going to scrape that in. A little bit hiding behind the scenes. All right, butter's all in there. Now we just need to kind of mix that in to our dry ingredients. You can see I'm just using my spoon to kind of break it up a little bit. I want that butter nicely distributed. This is so much easier, in my opinion, than using a pastry cutter. And then the box grater, I just run it under really, really hot water. All that butter melts right off, and it's so easy to clean. Next is our buttermilk. Ideally, I should have left this in the fridge until I was ready to use it, but it's still nice and chilly. It'll be fine. The reason we want it cold is because we want to keep the butter as cold as possible. Again, helps with those nice layers or that nice texture. So cold buttermilk is best. Colder the better. You don't have to put it in the freezer though. This is 3/4 cup of buttermilk, and I'm just going to drizzle it over top and then use my spoon, just kind of stir the ingredients together quickly, gently, not going too crazy here. I want the buttermilk nicely distributed, and I want the ingredients to be shaggy but starting to cling together. And it's still a little bit dry, you can see that, but I'm pretty happy with that. So let me make a little bit of space here. Grab my flour. I'm just going to lightly dust this with a little bit of flour. Turn this dough out onto the countertop. You can see I have a little dry pocket right there. I didn't work together. I'll get that, no problem. Everything off the spoon. And then just use your hands real quickly to work everything together. Even if it seems dry at first, it will come together, and you shouldn't have to do much to get it to that point. It'll be a little sticky in some parts, a little dry in others. All right, so once I have it all together, I kind of like to just flatten it a little bit so it's like an inch-ish thick, and then we're going to laminate the dough. That sounds a little bit fancy or like a really super technical technique. All that means is we are folding the dough over itself. So we fold it, quickly flatten back down to be about an inch thick, turn the dough 90 degrees, fold it over itself again, flatten it again, and turn it, and just keep doing the same thing. Now, if it seems very sticky, you can dust your hands with just a little bit of flour or add a little bit to the dough, but you want to do that very, very sparingly because introducing too much flour can make the biscuits a little bit more dry or tough. So we're turning again, flattening, turning, flattening. And I like to do this like 5 or 6 times. I'm gonna use a little bit more just because it's a little messy. My hands could use it. So this laminating procedure, Also encourages those nice layers. I've completely lost count of how many I've done. I did a little extra. That's actually not ideal. All right, this is our last fold over. We're just going to flatten this to be about 1 inch thick. Always really bad at telling exactly what that should look like. So I like to cut these biscuits to be about 2.5 inches in diameter. So when you're cutting these out, just keep your cuts nice and close. Let me start over here. And anytime you're cutting biscuits, some people will just cut them into squares with a knife. That's fine too, but press straight down. Don't twist. Twisting can make the edges a little bit funny. Let me clean my hands because they're a mess. But twisting can kind of make them rise a little extra lopsided, so just always press straight down. I just bake these on a normal baking sheet lined with parchment paper. And then we'll take our biscuits, just carefully transfer them over to that baking sheet. Oh, it kind of helps if you dust the cookie cutter with a little bit of flour too. Help keep it from sticking. I'm looking at these now and I'm like, I don't know if that's 1 inch. It's a little bigger. So when I'm putting these on the baking sheet, I am giving them about 1 inch apart in space. Okay, it's a little small. So we made our cuts nice and close, but we still have some scraps, and obviously we don't want to waste these. So I'm just going to recombine the dough, flatten it, and I will laminate it again a time or two. Now the biscuits you make with the re-rolled scraps always tend to bake up a little bit wonkier, just like they look a lot funnier. So that's normal, but they still taste delicious. So definitely get your extra biscuits out of this. All right, this guy's gonna be really funky looking, but we're gonna bake him anyway. You can tell this guy's a little bit short. He should really be a little bit thicker, but we're just gonna bake him up anyway. These go in the center rack of your 425-degree Fahrenheit oven. They typically need to bake for about 13 minutes. I look for some really light golden browning to happen on top, but honestly, they sometimes will stay really pale too, and that's fine. So just keep an eye on them, and you can usually look at the sides to tell if they're done, or just give them like a gentle poke on top, and so long as they don't really sink or look super doughy, they're usually done. All right, these hot out of the oven, super hot. Sometimes you may notice with these, I'm not seeing it here, but sometimes you'll notice a little bit of butter pooling around the bottoms. Usually you let the biscuits cool a bit, and as they're cooling, they kind of reabsorb that butter, making them super nice and buttery. So don't worry if you see that. It's actually a testament to how buttery and delicious these biscuits are. These are pretty golden brown. I baked these in my smaller oven I have down here. In my larger oven upstairs, they bake up a lot more pale. So here's one that I baked upstairs. So you can just have some variation, and just because they aren't this golden brown doesn't mean they aren't done baking. I just don't want you to overbake them waiting for them to get this color, because they're not as good if they're overbaked. All right, these aren't the tidiest things. They look a little bit like accordions trying to open, but they are so good, so buttery, and I'm so excited for you to try them. Let's cut into one, or break into one. They're so light and buttery, and they taste even better than they look. I'm really excited for you to try these. If you do, let me know what you think. I really do always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. These are just so good. Okay, here we go. I should probably do that being a little clunky.
Is it a box cutter or a box grate?
Oh, I call it a box cutter. Great. My fingers are slippery. Completely lost count of how many I've done. 10.
0 over 6. You're on like 8.
Okay, let's do my last one. I don't know what else to say. There's probably something in there.